Hey, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. It's playoffs time. That's right. It's time for you to take this ball over the line, win your fantasy playoff league. We're going to help you set your rankings there, and I'm going to stop using metaphors. Jeff Erickson here, help you try to win your playoff leagues. We're trying to talk rankings today. Before we get into the rankings talk, we'll get you caught up on all the latest breaking news. There is a lot to deal with here. Right off the top, we got the Thursday night game. Two big issues to talk about here. Starting off with Drake London, he has been ruled out for the Thursday night game against the Bucks. No surprise, he hasn't practiced since suffering the injury. Still no practice this week with that PCL injury. There is a legitimate question whether he'll play the rest of this season. You know, the Falcons don't have much to play for, including a first-round draft pick for that matter. But there's little reason to rush him back with them officially eliminated from the playoffs there. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him the rest of the year. Unfortunately, Kirk Cousins barely got to see him this year. Only like a handful of snaps in the Carolina game. It was the only time that Cousins was out there at the same time as Drake London. On the other side of the ball, Mike Evans will, however, be making his return. He was activated from the IR today, listed as questionable. This is kind of common when players come off the IR, though. They originally are listed as questionable. They eventually get to be put into that active lineup there, though. So I think he is going to play. Will he be on a snap count? Will he be on some sort of restriction? My guess is yes, he probably will be. I think, you know, you look at where he's coming back from with the collarbone. I think there might be you want to see how he reacts to like being tackled, for instance. They're taking a few hits. I think he will play. I would rank it Godwin, Ibuka, Evans this week. Others may disagree in terms of how you would rank the players. I think it's really close. And it might be one of those situations there where it depends on the week. It depends on the opponent. It depends on the game flow. At least it's not like a knee injury or anything of that nature there. So it won't affect, for instance, that much how he's going to be able to run the ball. But I mean, to run when he's trying to get separation, things of that nature. So Mike Evans, he is back. Good news there. I'm seeing some questions populate in the forum. Good. I want to get to a bunch of these questions. Really looking forward to that there. We'll be doing that today to help you out on all of these and more. The Washington Commanders, bad news there. Maybe good news if you're a Commanders fan, actually. Jayden Daniels is not going to play this week. He has been ruled out. I actually think this is a good thing. I don't think they should be forcing him back. Another team out of contention now. I think this is the right play. I think this is smart for them not to be kind of forcing him back. And at least they gave us notice ahead of time, too, so we can react around this. Marcus Mariota is not a bad streamer this week. You know, don't want to use the double negative. He's a decent streamer this week. Good matchup against the Giants. I can think of some worse, uglier quarterbacks we could use this week. And that includes in Oakland, or in Las Vegas, which is actually going to be in Philly. Because it doesn't look like Geno Smith is going to be able to play this week. We might be seeing Kenny Pickett this week. Bottom 5 quarterback, probably, depending on what the Colts do at quarterback, depending on a couple other situations there. It could be a pretty nasty scene in Philly this week. Philly, a heavy favorite, and it won't be because of their offense. I think this defense, though, may have had some issues against the Bears, but I think this is still a legit, really awesome defense. And I think it's going to be an issue there. For these Raiders, I still would start Brock Bowers, and that might be the only Raider I start. And even Bowers, I mean, I'm not going to downgrade him that much. Pickett did find him in the Broncos game. I think you can at least use Brock Bowers in this game there. So no Geno Smith in this one there. Tough break there for anybody who had Smith in like a super flex league. Can't imagine using him in a single quarterback league. But hey, I've seen some crazier things happen, including myself. I had to start Amir Abdullah in a fantasy championship game last year. So stranger things have happened. T. Higgins had a limited practice today for the Cincinnati Bengals. He is listed in the concussion protocol still. After what happened against the Bills, you know they're going to take extra pains through the independent neurologist to make sure that he's clear to play. But this is the first step in the right direction. So we'll see if he's able to go. Did miss the previous Ravens game, so it wouldn't be beyond the Bengals' abilities to be able to pull this off even without Higgins. But I'm certainly you really want to have all your weapons in an absolute must-win game for the Bengals. If they don't win this game, they are officially eliminated from the playoffs. So it's kind of a depressing scene there in Cincy. Joe Burrow had a kind of an emo press conference today, picked up at the end by the offensive line question there, the Christmas present. The birthday present for Burrow there. So at least we had that going on, but it's kind of a depressing scene otherwise. CeeDee Lamb in the concussion protocol, but participated in practice today. I left him up in my rankings. I think that I kind of departed from my usual policy because of the extra time. Usually I rank the guys that left with an injury towards the bottom of my rankings, but both with CeeDee Lamb and with Devon Achane, I left them in their usual spots. I'm assuming both play, judging by the commentary coming from their respective teams. So I expect Lamb to be able to go. Finally, one other news note: no Lamar Jackson in practice today. So far, the reason undisclosed by the Ravens. This makes 5 straight weeks that Lamar Jackson hasn't practiced on a Wednesday. And honestly, Wednesday practice isn't always that big of a deal. It's a bigger deal for quarterbacks, I think, than any other position. And the fact that it's 5 weeks in a row with Lamar, we finally saw him score a rushing touchdown last week. He looked a little bit more mobile, but still a little bit off at times as well. I think he breaks out of it this week against the Bengals. I know I might have said the same thing on Thanksgiving. I think it's 2 more weeks have passed. You get the full week to rest and prepare. I think it'll be a little bit different. I think Baltimore is going to put up a number. It's the question whether since he can keep up. I think the Baltimore offense will be far better than they were the first time out on Thanksgiving night. All right, I see a bunch of questions coming in. We're going to hit those up. We'll start going through rankings otherwise. But first, quick note from our friends over at Dabble. Dabble isn't just another DFS app. It's the ultimate social platform where you can connect with other fantasy sports lovers. Dabble lets you win big. You can win up to 5,000 times your money this football season. Starting with Dabble is easy. New users get $25 free when signing up. No deposit necessary. Check out the link in the episode description below to download Dabble now. Thanks to Dabble for their sponsorship of this podcast. The questions are coming in. We have a lot of quarterback questions, which is great because that's what we're going to hit first on this here. So looking forward to kind of tackling these. It is a gross week at quarterback. And I know I see some of the questions even hinting at the grossness of it there. I don't blame you. I've got a couple of leagues where I've had some pretty nasty ones here. Let's start off here with Justin, who asks, rank these gross quarterbacks: Baker, Mariota, or Trevor Lawrence. Baker Mayfield obviously coming off a really bad game in the monsoon. At least the conditions will be better. The opponent will be, I think Atlanta's I'd rather face Atlanta right now than I would in facing the Saints, which is kind of crazy when you think about it from the start of the season, but that's where it is right now. We've seen some pretty huge games against the Atlanta Falcons. So that said, it's Lawrence versus Baker for me on this one here. Mariota is in a good matchup, but there's so many other issues with this team. I'm going Trevor Lawrence first. Home game against the Jets. The risk you have with Trevor Lawrence is he's a big favorite. And I say it's a risk because that just means that maybe you get in a game flow there where they're running the ball out. Think of the Chargers game, for instance, there, where, you put pretty pedestrian numbers from Lawrence. I think it's a little different here against the Jets. But just want to watch that one a little bit there. But I think I like Lawrence a little bit more than Mayfield on Thursday night. Thanks for the question, Justin. Let's go to J Red, who says, need 2 flex in a PPR league. Jayden Higgins, Quentin Johnston, Gadsden, Likely, and Strange. Jayden Higgins for sure on this one. And I like Isaiah Likely. Isaiah Likely going up against the Bengals. Guys, how many times have we talked about the Bengals being a funnel for tight ends this year? Historically bad against tight ends. I'm going to pull up the exact stats on this one here because it's remarkable. If you look at it there, one of the cool tools that we have on RotoWire, you guys should be checking out if you haven't already, is the defensive by position. You just go to NFL, you go to reports, and it's defense by position. You can look and see for the Bengals over the last 3 weeks, they're the worst team against tight ends. 25, 399, 1 touchdown. And that's just in 3 games. That's 15.4 points for the tight end just for those 3 games. And that's just for the last 4 weeks. If you do full season, the numbers are just crazy as far as that goes at tight end. For the Bengals against tight ends over the course of the season, 1,258 yards allowed, 15 touchdowns. Just think about that. 15 touchdowns. Nobody else has double digits. Next highest is the Commanders at 9. So that just gives you an idea of the extent of how much the Bengals have been pliable against tight ends. Got another quarterback question here from Big Meech. Big Meech asks, Baker, Sanders, or Mariota? So, interesting question there. I'm going to go Bakers on this one here. I'm going to go Baker Mayfield on this one here. That's the way I'm leaning on this one there. Shedeur Sanders had a really nice fantasy game last week. You watched the replay of that game. There was a couple big plays, including the play to Judy, which looked like a busted coverage play. He had the rushing touchdown, which helped. And then they were behind by a couple of scores, and he just threw and threw and threw again. I don't trust that against the Bears. I'm going to go Baker on Thursday night on this one here. So thank you, Big Meech, on that one. There are a lot of Baker Mayfield questions. Yet another one. Jay Red asks, we got May versus Mayfield. I'm going to go with May on this one here. Drake May. I know it's not a wonderful matchup there. You look at what he's got going on against Buffalo. Did play pretty well in that game. Remember, he threw some big dimes late in that one for the game-winning drive. Home game here, coming off the bye week. There's a threat there that they get some of the production in the running game. But I'm going to go May over Mayfield. I think it's pretty close as far as that goes. Guys, one thing I'm going to do here to try to help you guys see what I'm doing here is I'm going to share the rankings with you here as well. My value meter here. So we'll post that up on the site. You can kind of see for yourself as I kind of go through these, and you can see some of the questions that we have going on here. So thanks for everybody sending in these questions. We'll keep rolling with them. Keep sending those questions in, folks. We got a few more up in the queue, but including a defensive one. We'll get to that in a little bit. Let's talk about a couple other quarterback ranking issues here. And let's start off. One of the questions I want to hit up is, what do you do with Patrick Mahomes right now? What do you do with Jalen Hurts right now? The problem children, if you will. Plural is hard. But Jalen Hurts, let's start off with him. 5 turnovers on Monday night. Brutal game. It got worse as it went on, it seemed at times. Ironically enough, A.J. Brown still had a big game despite Hurts' turnovers. Some of that was because, Brown was the only guy that ate. Goddard had some receptions in this one. They get the Raiders this week, and the Raiders obviously are one of our answers, one of our answer keys, one of the teams we want to be able to try to target. So that's good, at least. The only thing sometimes you worry about with the Raiders is that because they're so far behind, you have to worry a little bit about, whether it's just going to run the ball down their throats. I could see that happening. Again, I'm still starting Jalen Hurts. I've got him in the NFFC, made the playoffs in the NFFC primetime. I'm going to go ahead and use Jalen Hurts. Despite his turnovers, despite everything that's happened, I'm going to go ahead and use him. As you can see in my rankings over on the value meter, which you can see, hopefully you can see on the screen, and you can check them out on RotoWire, by the way, promo code SXM. Still got Jalen Hurts in my top 10. I do not, however, have Patrick Mahomes in my top 10. He drops down to 15 for me. He's coming off his worst all-time game by QB rating, at least. 3 interceptions, no touchdowns, 160 passing yards. Just a brutal finish there for him against the Houston Texans. So I don't want to just react just to that game, but it's been obviously a 1.5-year trend with Mahomes and with the Chiefs offense. It's not all on him. A lot of that is on the rest of the team, on the rest of the offense. Travis Kelce with those brutal drops against Houston. We saw Rashee Rice with an awful drop. We also saw Mahomes throw a brutal hospital ball to Rashee Rice earlier in that game, and he took a huge hit across the middle. So I can see that being something that could be a lingering issue with him. So got him down at 15. For some leagues, that's good enough to start. For others, it's tough. If you look at some of like the pickup guys this week, and I'm going to update my rankings on Thursday with the news on, like, for instance, Kenny Pickett replacing Geno Smith, for instance, and whatever the Colts do. It's pretty brutal at the bottom here. You don't know who's going to start for the Jets. You don't know who's going to start for the Colts. We think it's going to be Pickett for the Raiders. Mariota, I've got at 26 of the replacement guys, and I could squint and see putting him a little bit higher, maybe up to even around 20. There's a couple of interesting guys here on this list as well. Jacoby Brissett's been awesome for us so far, but he gets the Houston Texans this week, at Houston especially. That's a bad spot. I've got him pretty low in my rankings this week, all the way down to 23. I also want to highlight JJ McCarthy, who finally had a decent game last week, has a great matchup against the Dallas Cowboys, and yet I don't fully trust. I really worry about the pass rush getting to him a little bit. He still hasn't unlocked Jefferson, still deep in my 20s. All right, let's look for a few more, a couple, see if there's any more. We got another quarterback question from Uncle Ted. He says Sanders against the Bears, pretty nice. It is not. It's not a bad matchup. Bears lately, if you look over the course of the season, opposing quarterbacks have averaged like 23 points against them per game. Jordan Love had a couple of big throws. Can Sanders exploit that? I have my doubts. They just lost their starting center. I think that's a big deal. Start in terms of pass pro. Their tackle play is awful. And it's hurt Quinshon Judkins all year. I think it might hurt Sanders too. That's why I'm a little bit wary of going that route there. We got another question from Master J. Talks about a little bit about another quarterback question. Lamar, Stroud, or Sanders? It's either Lamar or Stroud for me. If Lamar is full go, if he clears the injury list by Friday, I'm going Lamar. I think it's a bounce back week for him. If not, then Stroud, who I really like at home against Arizona. We saw how bad Arizona looked this past week. Really kind of laid down against the Rams. And granted, it's the Rams, tough team, but still, it was a pretty ugly thing, ugly team, ugly event there for the Cardinals to kind of go ahead and look at that there. All right, so that hits our quarterbacks. We're going to talk running backs here and keep firing those questions. I'll hit quarterback questions later too if they still come through. Don't worry about that. But right now, got a quick note from our friends over at Prosper Trading. Every weekend, millions bet on sports, hoping to beat the odds. But here's the truth. The house always wins. With trading, you're not betting, you're building. At Prosper Trading Academy, we give you the tools, the education, and the live guidance to actually create an edge. You can control your risk, compound your wins, and trade alongside real pros every single day. Stop gambling on games you can't control. Start trading the markets you can. Visit prospertrading.com/roto today. That's prospertrading.com/ROTO and take your shot at real financial growth. Big thanks to Prosper Trading for their sponsorship of this show. It really helps us keep the lights on there, so we appreciate you guys. Let's talk a little about running backs here. There's every matchup, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. We're trying to break this down a little bit there. We got some questions firing through right away. We'll hit one of these right away here from this one is from Brand B in a cut. He asked Warren, Devin Singletary, or Kyron Williams. And the Singletary aspect of that is noteworthy there because Tyrone Tracy got hurt in the Monday night game before the bye. Note came down today that Tracy was full practice today. So that's an adjustment I'm going to make in my rankings. I'm going to downgrade Singletary a little bit from where I have him, which is currently at 25. I'll probably put Tracy ahead of Singletary. It's close because Singletary gets some of those goal line carries. Always kind of tricky to handicap that team. But you know what? Same thing with the Steelers. It's a timeshare between Warren and Kenneth Gainwell, or you go with Kyron Williams. I think the answer has got to be Kyron Williams. I know Blake Corum's awesome. Blake Corum had a better game than Williams last week. Kyron Williams is still the starter. He's still going to get a decent volume. I think he's got the highest floor of those three. Maybe if you are hurting, maybe if you're in a situation there where you're looking, you've got you're an underdog in a playoff matchup, I'd swing for the fences with Warren, but I think I'm going to go Williams, Warren, then Singletary in that order. Thanks for the question there. These are all tough calls this time of year, especially in the playoffs. Every lineup decision kind of hits a little bit more. Same with like the last week of the fantasy regular season. I almost got knocked out of the NFFC playoffs because I made a couple of bad lineup calls. I sat Caleb Williams. I started Jalen Hurts. I'm going to do that every time though, but that cost me. And I was 2 points out of getting knocked out of the playoffs. There's also 2 points out of being in second place. So could have gone either which way there. Couple new running back notes here. Chris Rodriguez did not practice today, had a groin issue in practice. Got to watch that one because this is a really good matchup against the Giants. And Rodriguez has been the starter. He's been running well. He just gets game flowed a little bit. I don't expect game flow to be a problem this week against the Giants. So you want to see whoever is going to get the carries for this Commanders team. Honestly, I want one or the other. I want them to narrow down their tree of carries there. I want fewer people to be in the picture, not more. So if Rodriguez were eliminated from the picture, I might even consider starting Bill for the first time in a long time. Another situation I want to point out is Rico Dowdle, Carolina Panthers. Hey, these guys are still alive in the playoffs. They are tied with the Bucs for the NFC South, which is just crazy. Something to watch for too, though. is that Dowdle, who had taken over the starting gig for the Carolina Panthers, still might be the starter, but the carries, the snap distribution has changed. Chuba Hubbard is an equal partner again in this backfield. We're back to a real timeshare. Makes it tough to start either. Carolina goes at New Orleans this week. Theoretically, there should be a good amount of rushing going on for them. But the Saints kind of shut down Carolina in the running game in the second half of that game. Dowdle had a touchdown on the very first drive. After that, he did very little. We'll see what Carolina does out of the bye to kind of counteract that there. But I'm really going to watch that one closely to see what happens, because I think there's going to be some other interesting issues there to kind of pay attention to. All right, let's hit up a couple more of these questions here. This one is got multiple positions. This is from Master J as well. 1 full point PPR. Tetaroa McMillan, James Cook, Michael Wilson if Marvin Harrison Jr. is out. I would eliminate Wilson because of the opponent this week. Even if Harrison plays, hey, thank him for getting you to this point. But in this particular instance, I don't think you can start him over McMillan or Cook. I go Cook first, and then I go McMillan. I think it'll be a little bit of a lower scoring game in Carolina and New Orleans. Cook, I know he didn't do much against the Pats last time out. I think it's a priority to get him going. You see the Bills the numbers when Cook does well versus when he doesn't do well, they're stark. So I think I'd pay close attention to that one there. So that's one that I'd pay, I'd watch for a little bit there. J-Red asked Jalen Warren or Isaiah Likely in a PPR flex. I'm going Warren. As much as I love Likely this week, you can't count on nearly as much volume. So I would go Warren in this particular instance there. Very close, but I go Warren. A couple other running back questions are coming out here that we should be talking about, but we got another running back question. I think we hit this one here from we did get this one here, so I'm going to move on. But a lot of other questions here on the forum, so keep them rolling here, guys. A lot of other we're going to hit wide receivers here in a bit. First, quick note, if you're listening on the podcast, here's a quick note from us on the BlueWire Network. Thank you to the BlueWire Network. Appreciate their sponsorship as always. Let's talk about a couple of key wide receivers. We kind of really hit this one already, so I won't belabor the point. Michael Wilson, he is a winner getting us into the playoffs. He won't be a winner this week. You're hoping for him more as a floor play this week. He's not going to bust out. I'd be surprised if he does. I hope I'm wrong, because I'm invested in him in a lot of places, including the Scott Fish Bowl. But hold on to him, hold on to Brissett, and hope that you advance to week 16 and 17. Because guess what? In week 16, he gets the Falcons. Week 17, he gets the Bengals. Trey McBride might break the time-space continuum in that game. I mean, it's such a great matchup for him. But it's just something there. It's just tough, though, against Houston. Really nasty against Houston. The other guy I'd like to point out is DK Metcalf. We finally came back to life last week, got some downfield throws from Aaron Rodgers. They made a priority of that. They get Miami this week. These are corners that you can attack. The problem with Metcalf is he got hospitalized with a stomach issue on Sunday night. Looks like he's going to play, but you got to wait and watch this one a little closely, and they play on Monday night. So you're not going to know at least until tomorrow for the first practice report. It may take it all the way through the weekend. You might have to be making a decision on less information. So just be aware that this might be an issue here that we're worried about here as far as what happens with the case with DK Metcalf. I've got him a little lower in my rankings this week. If you look at where I've on my value meter for the week, I've got DK Metcalf at 27. If he gets fully cleared, he moves into my top 20. Moves right there, I think, next to Zay Flowers and Cortland Sutton, where they always are. Those guys are always kind of like hit or miss every single week. And I'm telling you, this week, I hate this range when ranking wide receivers every single week. The variability, I'd say after maybe like 12 is really tough. And I'm even moving Christian Watson down when I do my next set of rankings. It's just that tough. You guys have all been in this picture. You've been starting these same guys all season long, so you know what I'm talking about. Here's a question involving Cortland Sutton, as a matter of fact. This one is good times here. Sutton, Judkins, Tracy, Debo, Hampton, Neal, Pittman. So it's a couple. It's pick 4 of these guys. So let's see, who are our sits going to be? Our sits here are going to be Devin Neal, who was limited in practice today. Sadly, Michael Pittman, because I don't know who's going to be throwing the ball to him. And then my last sit is probably Debo with Mariota throwing it to him. It's close as far as that goes because the matchup's pretty good. You can make a case for sitting Tyrone Tracy as well. So Tracy versus Debo. Maybe check updated rankings later on in the week, and I can have some. I might have more thoughts on that one there. Let's get a couple more questions here. Michael asks, is T. Higgins likely to play this Sunday? Great question. Limited in practice today. We talked a little bit about this at the top of the show. It's all about the concussion protocol. It's, with the concussion protocol, we know the good thing is it's either or. It's either yes, he's going to play, he's been fully cleared, or no, he hasn't been cleared. It's not like you're on most cases, other injuries, you worry about a snap count, you worry about that sort of issue there. That's not the case here with the players in the concussion protocol. So, your guess is as good as mine as far as whether he's going to play. But, the fact that it's the second time this year he's been in the concussion protocol and multiple other seasons, it's something to kind of watch and worry about here. Albert asks, Rico Dowdle or Juwan Jennings, half-point PPR. Jennings has a good matchup, sneaky good matchup there against the Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans. Weird to play them this late in the season, but here we are with that. But Jennings versus Dowdle it's a close call. I've got Jennings at 38 in my flex rankings, Dowdle at 40. I'm going to go Jennings here. So I tough call. I hope it works out for you there. That's the way I'm leaning as far as that goes. Justin Jefferson or JMO is another. Two problem children here. Justin Jefferson, I've got at 20. I'm sorry. I was looking at the flex rankings. I think I've got him at like 27 in my wide receiver rankings. No, I've got him a little higher at 23. Jamison Williams, I've got higher at 14. This is the highest. Detroit Rams is the highest total on the docket for the week. It's at 55 points. Really high total on this one here. Expect a lot more. Expect him to fill up the box score a little bit more. Healthier Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of dictates a little bit more that this is going to be a case where Amon-Ra St. Brown's going to get the majority of the targets, but I think there's enough room for JMO. He's had some big games against the Niners before in the past too. So good question there. Thanks for the question. Let's keep them rolling here. Lots of good questions. Tyler Shuck versus Shadur Sanders. That's from Tech Ovis. And, this is Tyler Shuck. We had the two rushing touchdowns in the pouring rain against the Bucs that won them the game. Passing was tough. Ironically, of course, I've got him back-to-back in my rankings. I got Shuck one spot ahead of Sanders. Check the weather reports for Chicago. I might move that around, but it's supposed to be really cold in Chicago this weekend. So I think I'll probably stick with Shuck, who's going to be in the dome. So I think that's a route I'm going to go as far as this one goes. Michael asks, would you start Travion Henderson or Woody Marks this week? Good call. Good question. Again, we every week we have to deal with the Travion Henderson question. What sort of usage is he going to get? What versus Ramondre Stevenson? I've got Henderson at 16 in my rankings, going up against Woody Marks, who is getting a lot of workload, but can he cash in on that? Arizona's a sweet matchup. It's a close call. I'm going Henderson over Marks. Your mileage may vary. Trust your gut on this one here. It's close enough there that if you've got a good feel for it, that's the way. I kind of follow that there. See if I can find a few more questions that we haven't gotten so far. Appreciate all the ones that have been flowing in here. Eric Angel says, I've got Brock and Daniels. Should I drop Daniels, not trusting him now? Yeah, I think so. I don't know how much we see of him the rest of the year. And on top of that, I don't know how much he runs the rest of the year. So you're going Brock Purdy most likely over Daniels most weeks. We can always pull up. We should pull up the Niners schedule the rest of the year too. They get Tennessee this week. Obviously, that's a great matchup for you right then and there. Looking at the rest for the Niners here, they've got after this game against the Titans, they get the Colts indoors at Indy, home against the Bears, home against the Seahawks. Obviously, that week 18 probably won't matter for your fantasy championship. So we're looking at Titans, Colts, Bears. I'd say that's pretty good. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be using Daniels the rest of the season. I don't know if I don't know if the Commanders are going to use him the rest of the season. Good question. Thanks for asking on that one there. Let's hit up a couple more before we get on out of here. Actually, got a couple more to figure out. A couple of tight end issues I wanted to talk about before we get on out of here too. Notably, what do you do with Tyler Warren this week? Tyler Warren is a real problem because we don't know who's going to be the quarterback. Honestly, if it's Phillip Rivers, I almost feel better about it because there's not going to be a whole lot of scrambling. Younger quarterbacks also often check down to the tight end. I'm going to leave Warren in my top 10 this week. I've moved a couple of likely, I moved likely ahead of him. I moved Brenton Strange ahead of Tyler Warren this week. There's a number of other ones. I moved Kyle Pitts ahead of Warren as well, but Jake Ferguson is kind of touchdown dependent now. Dallas Goedert seems hit and miss. Rondé Gadsden had to block a lot last week, only had one catch. So I really can't move those guys ahead of Warren. I actually think if you look lower in my rankings, maybe Harold Fannin deserves a little bit more consideration to maybe move him ahead of Warren. That would be one I think you can make an argument for. But I think for the most part, I think you're stuck with Warren, you're stuck with Taylor, and you're hoping for the best. I think Pittman, Pierce, Josh Downs, obviously, I think those guys are probably not good starts, and especially this week at Seattle. That's the ultimate nightmare spot. So I think that's one we'd avoid. Got one more question from Master J. Asks Juwan Johnson, or Isaiah Likely. Quick note on Juwan Johnson. He's an awesome guy. Came on our show on SiriusXM Fantasy about 3 weeks ago during the Saints bye week, joined us, talked about moving from wide receiver to tight end, talked about all those travails and all that, how he had to focus on improving some of his drop issues. Really good guy. That said, I'm going Likely over him this week. Just trust the volume a little bit more this week. And of course, it's the ultimate matchup. I have Likely ahead of Mark Andrews, even though Andrews is the guy, it's the long time guy, the contract extension. Likely has been the guy that's been getting open more lately. So I'm going to go Isaiah Likely on this one here. We'll hit a couple more before we get on out of here. Got another one from Brand B in a cut. It says pick 4 cut 2. Kyron Williams, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Warren, and Gainwell. Well, you really want to start one of the two Pittsburgh running backs. I've got Warren ahead of Gainwell. I think you should just examine that for yourself too to make sure you feel the same way. You're obviously starting Lamb. So I think this really comes down to Jamo versus Jefferson, and I've got Jamo ahead of Jefferson this week. And it's heretical. I know Jefferson, it's not like he's got diminished skills, but I think I'm going to go ahead and stick with I'm going to go with Jamo and as I've got him in my rankings over him there. So that's the way I'm going to go with that. Guys, your questions have been great. If I didn't get to them, please post them in my value meter. Please, use our Discord on RotoWire. Check us all out. You can also hit me up on Twitter at Jeff_Erickson. Loved all the good questions we had today. Good luck in your fantasy playoffs. Take care.